right, welcome to another episode of Art with Ian. This is the 7th episode in the real-time painting tutorial series we've been doing, and we are still working on our link painting. I've done a couple things between episodes here. Last episode, you might recall, I was working on some layers that were the background, but they were actually over the top of link. And I was saying I was going to merge everything down into one layer eventually, and it didn't really matter. And in a lot of cases that would be true, but I was thinking for the sake of this, the actually working on this in a tutorial fashion, I didn't want to be like using the lasso to like cut things out. I didn't want to like bog down my process in any way, shape, or form for the pace of these videos. So what I've done is I just took the stuff that was over the top of link, like the dappled light stuff, cut it up into its own layer and just put that on a layer with him. And then I took all the background stuff I was working on and I merged it down. So now the background is all one layer, and Link and the bottle and the fairy and everything, they're all on one layer. So first thing I want to do for this episode is go into the jar and paint a neck onto this bottle. I don't know how. I do know how. It's because I was talking and I wasn't thinking nearly enough. It's really difficult at times to like really be like processing what you need to process about the painting while you're actually speaking. But this jar doesn't have a neck. And I was watching back to make sure like the video quality was okay and everything. There was no bugs or anything. And I was watching myself paint this and I was like, where's the neck, dude? What are you doing, man? Put a neck on the thing. And anyways, so here we are. Gonna do that now. It was very strange that I just like completely seemingly ignored the fact that how a jar is constructed. But anyway, it's a thing that can happen. I've, at least to me, working on, you know, trying to work and speak at the same time is quite challenging. So that's my get out of jail free card for the howler that I had there. Let's get some of this color down here. Put some of this in here. Oh, also I noticed I said rendering, we know how to render spheres, and while this is quite sphere in its rendering style, sphere-like, it's actually probably more of a cylinder. We're probably thinking more of a cylinder in the rendering for this than a sphere. It's kind of a little of both, but just important to note. Okay, I'm going back to my MA brush number 1-2 that I've been using a lot. In this, it's actually the brush, like the main rendering brush that I use. So, just establishing the shape of this neck here. And then probably the bottle has like a little bit of that kind of thing that would happen. I also, you might notice this has gotten kind of brown. This that used to be light. It's because I changed the layer mode from soft light to like a regular layer mode when I was kind of sorting all my layers stuff out that I'd been working on. I think maybe I just want to have the light source hitting a little higher on this. Like right here. Okay. The green from him. Over here. Maybe make this mouth a little bit thicker. Anyways, I don't want to spend too much time caught up on the bottle, since we already spent a fair amount of time with it. Probably, I think this right here is too stark. Just ease that off some. Okay, now the bottle has a neck. So, crikey. That was a weird one. When I was watching this back, I was like, what the? How did I not notice that I wasn't putting a neck on this bottle? That's just weird. Okay, that'll be good enough for right now. Maybe. I don't know. I'm still not quite satisfied with it. I'm not sure what exactly is bothering me about it, but something is. Maybe it's the green. The green might be just getting too much in my way right there. Maybe we just need to put a little more subtlety into some of this. I'm going to slightly open the perspective up on the mouth of this a little bit. And also deal with that. Okay. Anyway. Getting carried away. All right, so since we're already here down at the bottle working, let's establish some of the magic that we were talking about from the fairy, the kind of just the trail of light coming from that fairy. Let's just see if we can kind of get that figured out. And I had actually on my sketch at some point, on my rough sketch somewhere, I had the line for it, but I think we're just going to redo it. I should have done some basic render of it a long time ago, and I never did, so here we are. So I'm creating a new layer. Let's call this Fairy Magic. And I'm going to get a pink from over here from the fairy. And we'll just leave it on that for now and see what that gives us. And I'm just going to start painting. I'm just doing this on regular mode. And we can change the layer modes, or we can do whatever we want eventually if we need to. Okay, so let's just assume fairy came out, came around the back side, then crossed over the front. Went around the back around the arm. And there we go. Then we just have to kind of decide how we want this to look, as far as like, are there little foggy things, little trails? We just want it to kind of look magical, obviously, and a little bit subtle, but still having some impact on the shot. Otherwise, it's kind of pointless. Okay. Just looking for little areas to like punch it up and areas to like leave it more faint. Let's create one more layer on top, and I'll probably merge this eventually, but I'm gonna go into, I think I'm just going to try out the soft round pressure size brush, and I'm going to zoom in and just start painting some spots coming off the fairy. Little you know, just like a shameless stealing from the way that they did Tinkerbell in the 1950s Peter Pan. Which I'm not sure if they actually were the first ones to kind of like think of, you know, fairy dust, kind of like that. But certainly it's been used a lot since then. Not sure how far back I should go with this. Probably not nearly this far back, which is why I have it on some layer, because I want to be able to push this back. But I want to be able to experiment. And I like to experiment on separate layers for obvious reasons. Maybe there might be just like little spots, right, where it's, you know, nice to have just that little bit of extra punch in. Because I'm zoomed in, it's hard to tell if this is working, but it's also hard to do this without zooming in, so little catch-22. The line from our perspective when we were drawing the Master Sword is making this look bad, but it'll be gone at some point. I think in the next episode, I'm going to say this now to actually force myself to do it. In the next episode, I will have found a reference, like a proper reference for the Master Sword, and I will render it so that it's done. I'm not really trying to avoid doing it. It's not going to be that hard to do. It's just one of those, like, I have less freedom than at pretty much in any other arena in the painting, because it's designed, someone else designed it, and I have to be true to the design, and that's just less exciting to me, basically. Hence why I've been avoiding it. I mean, it's an amazing design. It's not like I don't think the design is epic. It just... yeah, anyway. Okay, let's just see what we have going on there. So we could probably punch these up a little bit more even. Some of them, just a few. And the way that we're going to do that is by first adding a little size to some of them. And then we're going to go brighter into almost white. And put an actual center in them. So they're like little mini versions of the way the fairy's rendered, essentially. Okay, let's look at that for now. Okay, we could probably do even more of those, but we'll leave it for right now because I just want to kind of get a feel for this even being part of the shot. I think probably it's a good time to make the fairy feel more vibrant, since we're adding this, you know, punching in this magic. So I'm gonna call this glow. We're now in the fairy layer, and I'm just gonna go fairly saturated and put on the layer mode on color dodge, which is, you know, you got to be really careful with color dodge, and use the soft round, pressure opacity, and flow brush. I'm just going to we might need actually more color in the, that's too washed out. I almost wonder if I should use a different layer mode, but anyways, we'll try this one more time. I'm gonna go a little bit more color this time. Yeah, I think color dodge, because our background is fairly light right through here, I think color dodge might be just, we might use a little color dodge later, but I'm gonna change this layer mode to linear dodge, I think, or light color. Ooh, that's kind of nice. Lighter color. That might actually work for this, but now it's a little too dark. So let's just go to Control U brings up your hue, saturation, lightness. I'm going to just brighten this a little bit. And when you brighten in this, working in this panel, actually adding light desaturates your color, which a lot of times is not really ideal. But in this case, I actually want to desaturate it. So it's working perfectly. Okay, so now in order to actually get, actually I think I'm just gonna leave, I think that worked. I think that pretty much gave me the richness I was looking for. Yeah, okay, I like that, I think. So I'm gonna go with that for right now. I'm looking at this line here across its body, and it feels just a little bit straight. Like this fairy went, I mean, made an absolute beeline in that direction. No dip, no nothing like that. I'm also going to change the fairy magic. No, I have to have it over the top because of right here at the neck. Never mind. Okay, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into liquefy. It's the easiest way to probably do this. And this section here, hopefully you guys can see this. It's very faint. This section right here, I'm actually being really careful here because this can get pretty bad pretty quickly. I'm just trying to take the straightness out of this because it looked really mechanical And the last thing we want to associate with a fairy is mechanical. Okay, that feels better. So we'll leave that for right now. I think I'm going to experiment maybe with layer modes for this, just to see what we kind of get. I want it to be quite subtle. Ooh, I kind of like soft light. But it's a little too subtle, so what we're going to do, we're going to duplicate it. Control J to do that. Okay, that's starting to feel a little bit more like what I had in my mind. I don't want it to be this bold, first thing you notice, can't unsee it kind of thing, right? I want it to be this subtle, like, as you've been looking at the piece for a minute, you kind of, or maybe not for a minute, but you know what I mean, as you've been looking at the piece for a moment, you kind of start to, oh, look, there's the trail, the fairy came out of the jar, went around him, kind of a thing. So that feels better to me than what we had. I'm just gonna merge those two layers down together, because we don't need two of them. Alright, that feels pretty good. It might be a little too subtle, but we can work on that. Some areas, we can maybe punch some areas in a little bit more as we go. But for right now, I'm going to call that good. And I'm trying to decide if I want to work on the background, the environment a little bit more like we were last episode, or if I want to go into Link and kind of keep working him some. At this point in the piece, it's kind of just like, you know, for me anyways, it's kind of just back and forth. Just, I like to move around. I don't like to get stuck for too long in one place. I get bored, to be quite honest, when I do that. So let's see, let's collapse this. I think maybe we should probably work on Link some a little bit here. So I've got the dappled light and shadow layers on him here. I'm just wondering if I should just merge all this down. But technically speaking, I can actually work underneath the light and shadow because they're set to multiply and soft light, and I can actually have my work live underneath those multiply and overlay layers and actually punch through. So I might leave them for now, but eventually I will get rid of, or I will merge everything down. And I think maybe we could kind of start working out his like hands, and haven't worked on his face in some time now. Looks like probably dappled shadow. Looks like some of that green shadow color from the last episode. Something's angry. I'm getting these alerts. Huh, that's weird. Yeah, you can see the that is really weird. The keyboard stopped working. Poor timing. There we go. Wow. strange. Anyways, yeah, you can see some of this shadow that I didn't actually erase away all the way. That was like this bizarre. It looked a little less bad on his fingers, to be fair, but the color didn't work at all for his skin. Worked fine on his other clothing. Or other clothing. It worked fine on his clothing. It did not work fine on his skin. So let's go ahead and work on the rendering of his face and hair and hands and all that good stuff for a little bit here. So now that we have enriched the overall piece as far as the values and the weight of the dark, like how dark and light things are, we have a better feel for everything. I think I want to use a bit of like a... I want to give that feeling of like the edge of light at these shadows. And these shadows could maybe cool off a little bit too. Just a little bit. They're a little bit warm. I'm gonna go, yeah, cooling that off by going towards red. And also I went deeper. Going for that, you know, we're kind of going to try and bring this up now to that more getting towards a finished render. I don't think we'll get to a finished render on this episode, but we're going in that direction. Not so sure about that there. I'm gonna work in a little bit of just some lines, little faint hints of lines on his neck, because our necks, we move up our heads up and down, our necks fold a lot, and we end up with just these little subtle. And he's very young, so I have to be super careful that this stuff is not obvious. But it doesn't have to be in. But the more of these little tiny things that you do, the closer you can start to push the viewer into believing that they're seeing a real person. Actually, I don't want to go that light. I mean that warm. I kind of want to stay cool with this. I think maybe it would be a good idea to introduce some light from the environment, ambient light. Pardon my brain fart. To introduce some ambient light into some of the shadowed areas. That might be a nice give a nice feeling of carrying some of these colors into here. But it depends on how dark I end up going. just establishing a little bit of the shape here with your cheek kind of folds in, and then you have some cartilage right here. So I'm just kind of hinting a little bit at that. And again, he's really young, so all of these things are so subtle in our youthful, when we're young. The younger we are, usually, I mean, this is not always true, but usually when we're young, these kinds of things are not nearly as obvious. And then they become more obvious as we age. Sometimes not. It also just depends on the person's bone structure. Let's see here. Just giving a little bit more cheek to him. Let's look here at this. I think we could go a little bit more like this right here. The part of your eyebrow that kind of goes that direction is usually lined up with the temple. So I think we could probably bring this shadow up here with just a little bit more prominence. And also, I think right here, we could probably get away with just bringing his cheek bone out. And we got to be really careful how much we do this, or he's going to look overly chiseled. And I don't think Link is an overly chiseled face. We'll just get a subtle transition there. And I think we could either do light or we could do shadow on this side to show the same form. I think probably shadow is going to be the option, because as I'm trying light there, I'm not liking that. So let's get a shadow and just introduce a little bit of that plane change there on this side. Again, being very subtle. We can always add more, and we can always take away more for that matter. But I like to kind of work. I like to build up. Showing that shape of his mouth here. And he's also got, he's got a little bit of a resting kind of, oh, it feels good, I'm being healed kind of a thing going on. So that might just perk his mouth out that little bit more than normal. I think I'm going to go in here to zoom in some into his mouth. Need to go much darker. The corners of his mouth. Start to refine this a little bit. Let's get a little bit darker in here. be careful. Want subtle moves. And let's see here. Let's kind of establish where his nostril really is. It's like somewhere in there. We're gonna, when we zoom out, we're probably gonna have to make adjustments to this, but I think that needs to come out a little farther like that. Hopefully we didn't go too high with that. Okay. Noses can be deceptively challenging. They're very complex forms. I think I want to make his eyelashes a little darker. And just kind of add maybe a little bit more. Nuance to them. Also, he's got lower lashes kind of scrunched in here somewhere. Let's show a little bit of the folds of the eyelid. And there's also some folding happening here at the lower lid. Okay, I got carried. Somehow I got carried up there away from where I was actually working. I'm gonna go a little more saturated here. I'm just gonna start to paint some texture onto this lip. Some on the upper lip as well. Still think that some of this here feels not quite saturated enough. There we go, that's better. Trying to refine the shape of the lip a little bit here. Let's see, I think probably this coming off the corner of his mouth needs to be a more subtle value. Just need to find the right one. We want it to look like his flesh is turning, not like just some kind of line has been stamped onto the edge of his mouth. Now, that kind of rendering is fine for certain applications, but as I mentioned in an earlier video, I can't remember how many ago now, of this series, I am going to be taking this to a fairly realistic render, which is one of the reasons why I've said a few times that I'm taking my time, because this process, for me anyways, it just takes time, and it's better to be in a headspace where you're willing to let it take time. That got way too dark on me. It's better to be in a headspace where you're willing to let it take the time it takes than it is to be trying to kind of move quickly along. Granted, I'm not trying to go slow. I'm just being methodical, careful, trying not to overlook things that are important in the piece just because my headspace is wrong. And for a long time, as an artist, I was thinking about, not really necessarily thinking about the next piece while I was still working on the current one, but I was just really impatient. And it's not beneficial to this kind of work to be impatient. You gotta just settle in and work. And hopefully you guys are enjoying this kind of, like, really kind of much slower. Like, I mean, what are we on, episode 7 or whatever it is now? And, you know, we still have a ways to go, you know, and I don't even know how long it's going to take. Just establishing a little bit of environmental light right here on his neck to turn this form. We might even punch a little bit of that into here, like, just like right in here, you know, just to cool this down. Add some tonal variety. You know, now we've got that cool against that warm right there. And this is a very believable color to use. It's not just random, you know, because we have it, it's coming straight from our environment, right? So, okay, we've got a little bit, this is all getting a little too hard right here. So let's just soften it down. Notice I'm using cooler shadows here and warmer here. That is, you know, and in the nose too. That is the cheeks. The cheeks have and nose are a bit of a warm zone. Up in the eyes is a cooler zone of the flesh, and the chin is a cooler zone of the flesh. So it's important to learn your zones. We're clipped here. It's not good for the hair. This hair could definitely use some love. But, well. Just start to add some some nuances to this hair. This probably isn't the greatest brush for this, but it's alright. We're gonna get that color again from the environment and push it right onto here. Gotta be careful not to go too far with it. I'm actually gonna create a layer over the top that is not clipped, because these edges need to be, this hard edge needs to go away. Hair doesn't do that. Most things don't do that, for that matter. But that was just, you know, earlier in the process I was just establishing my shapes. And I like to work when I'm like establishing shapes and forms and things like that. I like to work more like bold and decisive looking, you know, so I can see really what I'm doing, and then subtleties can be added later. But you definitely don't want to leave hard, crispy edges on things if you want it to look realistic, painterly, and or, you know, in general not stylized. Since this is its own layer, I do think I can start to establish some of these hairs coming into his face that I was talking about several episodes ago. And I definitely don't think this is the right brush for this. Well, I know this is not the right brush for this. I'm going to try my chalky render brush and just see what that does. Something that actually gets paint down a little bit more without being overly stark. A couple of these can cast shadows, which will be nice. And we're just looking to start adding a lot more nuance to his hair. You know, we want it to actually feel fairly realistically rendered. I do think I need to probably hit it with some light as well to just start establishing a little bit more of the actual light source that would be hitting it, because hair is pretty reflective. It's got a pretty high sheen to it. And I mean, at least hair that's well groomed and not, you know, really rough looking, I guess. I would think his hair would probably pick up a little bit of more light than or a little more sheen than I've put on it. But we'll see. We'll experiment with that here in a moment. Let me go back to this environment color that I was adding in. That's a good one to rim light with. Gives a nice feeling. And we can, obviously it's going to get maybe a little too strong through here, we'll see. This right here is just too blonde right now. Work some nuances up into there. Just little things like that. We can finally fix these jagged edges that I've had going here for however long. It's possible that I've got a little too much going on here. Whoa, where am I going with that? Let's just Control Z. Let me erase some of this away. And then I can decide in the painting what I want. What is my time? 52. And yet another episode winds down. And we didn't even get to the hands. But faces are, well, they're always going to be the most time consuming. Really. Faces. Now, I mean, if I had like if I was using like a real human reference for him, this would probably go faster, because I would just paint, I would just paint basically a real person. But I'm not doing that specifically because I want to allow whatever my vision of Link is, having played the game over the years. I want that to kind of come through to some degree here. I don't want it to be like pushed into kind of just being some actual person's face. Now, not to say that there aren't probably a lot of people in the world who have perfectly good faces to like be Link, kind of a thing. Excuse me. But it defeats the purpose, I guess, in my opinion, of kind of trying to dig an image out of my own mind for this character that I've loved since I was a kid. If I just go and find a face and paint that. I'm gonna just try and put some scalp in here. And work on these edges a little bit. Just want this transition to feel pretty good. And we're zoomed in quite a bit, so it's hard to say if this is effective right now or not. It might be that I zoom out and it just looks dumb. Happens all the time. That's why working zoomed in is a really dangerous thing. But it's also really important if you want to reach a certain level of detail, so it's a little catch-22. Let's hit light onto this. Some of these strands. Some things starting to happen with the hair. We'll do a before and after here in a second. Maybe catch some light here. Little places. This turning up into the light. The places I'm putting the light are perpendicular to the light. So like when his hair turns, and I think that puts his hair perpendicular to the light, that's when I'm adding it. I'm not adding it at random. This is turning away from the light. This here might catch a little bit, but I'm not sure. Now let's just zoom out and start to look at this. We're at 57. Let's do a before and after on that hair. So we've definitely added nuance. We've also lost a little bit of our depth in the shadow area, which is to be expected. So yeah, I think that's a decent before and after for that. Let's also look at what we did with his face. So you can see the face has gained quite a bit of structure, and you know, it's feeling more refined. So yep, subtle moves, slowly building up. Next episode, we are going to paint the Master Sword. That needs to happen, obviously. It can no longer be this just flat thing that's kind of getting in the way of the piece coming together. So I can't avoid it anymore. I'm going to paint the Master Sword, and if we have time, I'll also work on the hand that's holding it, because I didn't get to that today because I got caught up in his face, which I could stay caught up in his face for the next 3 hours easily, because I just enjoy the process. So, you know. Anyway, that's going to do it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did enjoy it, give it a like, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell for notifications of future videos, and I will see you guys in the next one. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, share it with your friends, ring the bell for notifications of future videos, and I'll see you guys in the next one.